but I am excited to have you guys with me today and to walk through what I have learned and have developed so that you can hopefully apply it and do well with it as well. So today's presentation is the Greatness Game Plan, Crafting and Crushing Quarterly Goals. And this is a goal setting system that I developed a couple years ago and use with my team. And it's a quarterly goal system. So every quarter you revisit your goals. And so every time we've done that, we've refined it and refined it. And we have a pretty great system in place that helps us a lot. And so I'm going to walk through that with you guys today and give you an idea of how it all fits together. Now, typically to go through and actually do, the goal setting system is a minimum of like an hour and a half workshop up to like a several session course, both of which, if you know somebody who'd be interested or business or team that'd be interested in having that, I'd be happy to have a conversation about doing that live or virtually for your company group, whatever it may be. But today we're going to kind of just touch on the highlights so that you can get an idea of what it's like, hopefully apply some of these things immediately to whatever system you have in place, or reach out and I can get you the slides and the handouts, the forms that go with it, and so you can go more in depth yourself in the future. So this is our agenda, and I have a little graphic here to show you how it works. So we start this entire goal setting system with big goals. What do you want to be 1, 3, 5 years down the road? Then we go from really big picture to really small picture of like, what are we going to do in the next 12 weeks to get there? Where do we want to be in the next 12 weeks? What could we achieve and focus on in the next 12 weeks? And once we have our 12-week goals, we say, okay, well, what are our action goals? What are the actions we would need to take every week for the next quarter to reach that quarterly focus goal? And then you enact it, you track it every week. At the end of the quarter, you evaluate and you repeat it for the next quarter. Now, a little bit about me. Harley did a great introduction. I am an investor. I am a real estate agent. I have a team. And of course, I have being a wife to Harley and taking care of our 3 lovely children. So it's a lot on my plate. And using this system addresses all aspects of your life and gives you something to work on for that quarter in all aspects so that you're able to keep all parts of your life together and be a whole person and feel like you're achieving everything you want throughout. So our first step is to set big goals. Quote from Dan Sullivan here: the only way to make your present better is by making your future bigger. And so the first step in really setting what you're going to do this month, next month, the month after, is to think, where do I want to be 5 years down the road? And so the first step is really what I have in the forms as a future planner. And it's starting with dreaming. It's dreaming with where do we think we're going to be in 1, 3, and 5 years? And to give you some framework to help that, we break everything down. Like I said, we think of the whole person. So everything gets broken down into 4 areas. So the first area, and these 4 areas continue throughout the entire plan, is of course your business goals, right? You got to eat, you got to make money. And so we have a specific area to think about. Where do you want your business to be throughout? It can be your primary business. It can be a side gig. I work with a lot of real estate investors. And so when they're doing this planning, they're often thinking of their real estate investing, which they may have a separate W-2 at the time, but their business goal for them is really their real estate investing, as an example of how a side gig could be what you focus on. Then we have financial, because business goals and financial goals are 2 separate things, right? We want our business to grow or do whatever was going to fulfill us there. And we also want to track our finances, right? Building our net worth or our cash flow and really focusing on that, paying down debt, building up cash, building up assets, whatever that looks like for you. Then we have personal development, which is anything that makes you a better person, or think of skilling up. That could be a learning or growth, learning a new language. It could be a fitness, anything of that aspect can go in there. And then personal is something that speaks to your soul. Often these are relationships or social based, lifestyle, personal enjoyment, travel, things like that. So a couple things as you think about setting big goals for several years down the road is that most people, we've heard this phrase before, it's attributed to Bill Gates, most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. But we don't often think about why. So I wanted to kind of dig into this a little bit and tell you why. And the reason is because of compounding, right? Progress compounds. If in the next quarter I can take myself from this level to this level, and maybe I improved 2%, right? Well, now I'm at a higher base. And so when I improve another 2% in the next quarter, it's objectively more because I'm starting at a higher percentage. So you continually build and compound on what you do. And that's what allows you to really achieve more in 10 years than you would imagine is even possible. The key is that you have to keep chugging away and improving yourself every quarter in order to get that compounding. And impossible goals. As you think about 1, 3, and 5 years, I want you to think about doing impossible goals. They're extremely powerful in helping us realize where our heart truly lies and what we're truly capable of, because they force us to focus on, 1, what we need to prioritize, and 2, what we need to eliminate. When we think about increasing our output 20%, it doesn't force us to be as harsh in our judgment as if we think about increasing our output 100%. When you think bigger picture like that with impossible goals, it really makes it clear, oh, I wouldn't have time to do this. Like, this is a low level activity and it will not get me to that high level. So we really want to think about big impossible goals. The other thing that's important to write when we talk about setting big goals is, I guarantee in any audience, somebody needs to be told that you can want things just because you want them. You don't need to justify what you want. You don't need to have a reason for it. You can just want it because it would make you happy, because it would bring you joy. And so, there's a lot of guilt and drama and emotions that people have about this. So I just wanted to kind of, in this situation, tell you that it's okay to want things just to want them. If you need permission to release any kind of, limiting beliefs you had on that, I just want to bring it up there. Now, once you have these big goals, and what you would normally do is you take that planner, you'd brainstorm, you'd think about it, and you'd really come up with some clear big goals that you could envision for the next several years. And once you've done that and you have these clear goals, your next step is to develop quarterly focus goals, which the guiding question here is, what can you accomplish this quarter to achieve those big picture future goals? So I have a brainstorming sheet that helps with that. Again, we're following that same metric of business, financial, personal development, and personal to help guide you with that. And so you start with just brainstorming. You say, okay, well, what could I do in the next quarter to get me where I want to go? You want to, that's what you do. And then you want to start refining. Once you've kind of brainstormed a whole bunch of goals, you want to start to fine tune and refine, because we're going to end up with just one focus goal in each of these 4 areas, so that you're not distracted or trying to focus on too many. So you're going to end up with one focus goal. And as you're doing that and refining that and thinking about what to do, we want it to be a SMART goal, which, of course, specific. You want to laser focus in on one aspect of each of these that you're going to improve and work on for the next quarter. You want it to be measurable. It needs to be something with numbers associated. It needs to be something where a third party at the end of the quarter could look and objectively say, did you reach this goal or not? It needs to be achievable. This can be an issue. Sometimes people are like, well, I was at 100 this quarter, I'm going to go to 200. Most of the time, it's not really feasible or achievable to double your output, your results in one quarter. And when you do that, you're setting yourself up to not succeed, right? We want to think 10x goals in terms of a thought exercise and determining our activities. And yet when we're actually setting these focus goals, we need them to be something that is a stretch for us, but isn't something that's going to snap us. They need to be relevant. They need to align with your big goals. And often if people don't start with the big goals, then they're working on something this quarter that's not going to get them where they want to be in 5 years. So that's why we start with that 5-year plan. And then if you're familiar with SMART goals, the last T is time bound. And we solve that for you because we automatically say this is a quarter. Okay. And like I said, you brainstorm, you refine, you make sure you have SMART focus goals, and you end up with one focus goal per area. So a total of 4 focus goals that you work on for the quarter. There's some examples here. We're not going to read through all of them, but if you, again, are interested in working through this activity afterward, I'll send you the slides so you can have all of these. And then once you have your 4 focus goals, your third step in the process is to develop action goals to reach your focus goal. So, if we went back and took one of these focus goals that, for like a real estate investor, the top one on the list, that they were going to buy 2 doors with 8% cash on cash return in the next quarter, then their action goal would be, well, how are you going to do that? What specific activities are you going to do? Because you're not just going to wake up in a quarter and have 2 houses with 8% cash on cash return. You're going to do specific activities to make it happen. And those activities are our action goals. So we have a second half of this sheet, again, of this form, is to brainstorm some action goals and some things to get you thinking about what we want to think about when we're doing action goals is what do you need to start doing or do more of? What's in your top 20% that really moves the needle for your achieving your goal? And then also on the flip side of that, we want to work smarter and not harder. So what do we need to stop? What low value activities do we need to cut out of our lives that are not going to get us to our goal? What we also can think of it in our bottom 80%. And who needs to enter or leave our world to help us reach this goal? Who can you bring into your world to take over your 80% activities? Kind of like with Workergenics here, I will say that all my admins are a huge, huge part of passing off my bottom 80% so I can stay in my top 20% and do things like develop this and be here with you guys. We also want to think about, as we're developing our action goals, something that helps people is what level of action are you at for this goal? Are you in the learning phase where you need to be, reading a book a month on the topic or listening to podcasts or watching or researching? Or do you already have that base knowledge and do you need to be in the practicing phase, right? Again, if you're a real estate investor, let's say you want to be doing deal analysis, right? Practicing deals, things like that. Or are you in the action phase where you're taking action every day on this thing? Sometimes people can go anywhere in this. Sometimes people take it too easy and they put learning action goals when they should be at action. And then sometimes people do vice versa. So you want to be intentional with thinking about where you are and what level of action you need to be at. And then another consideration with these goals is lead versus lag measures. A lead measure is going to predict future conditions, and that's really where we want to be with our action goals. We want to have an action goal that is something like we're going to do this number of calls per day. We're going to have this many conversations per week. We're going to add this many contacts to our database every week. Something like that, that's a lead measure that's going to predict future business. A lag measure is something that's going to do past business, right? So like the number of sales you get this week is a measure of the lead measures that you did probably 90 days in the past, okay? So our action goals, we really want to focus on lead measures. So here's some examples. Again, I'm not going to go through these. This is something if you want to do it yourself, I can get you those slides. But to read through one, the first one here, an example of an action goal could be to attend 1 networking event a week and make 5 contacts. So I want you to see that this is very much a SMART goal, right? It's specific, it's measurable, it has some numbers attached there. It's achievable, right? We're not doing 10 networking events a week, which might be a little much. And it's really easy. It's time bound with the week. It's really easy at the end of the week to be like, did I or did I not do it? And the other thing is it's not just attending the event, it's making the contacts. It's realizing what's the purpose of the event and how can we encompass that in the goal as well. So now you have all 3 levels of goals, right? You have your big goals for 5 years down the road. You've got your focus goals, like this is what I'm going to achieve in the next quarter. And you have your action goals, which is going to be how you're going to do it. So then you got to enact it. You got to enact it and you have to track how it goes so that at the end of the quarter, you can use that data to improve. So we have a quarterly tracker here where you put in the information, you write in, you fill it out, your quarterly plan, what your focus goal is and what your action goals are. Super simple. You're writing a sentence for each, right? And then I highly recommend printing your plan so you can see it and it can be a part of your world. You know, you can put it as your computer desktop, something like that, but you need to keep it front and center so that you actually enact it. The other thing is, if it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist. So you need a time block. So once you've determined these things, you should be going to your calendar and saying, okay, here's the time that I'm going to dedicate, in our last example, to my networking event, right? I'm going to dedicate 2 hours a week. I tend to do a networking event Thursday morning, 7 to 9. So I'm going to put that time block there. If I do my networking event at a different time in a given week, I can just drag the time block over. And then if you're tasking, as you get involved with this and you get more advanced in it, it may be to the point where you want to use some project management software to help you track all of these things, especially if you get to be a little more complex. Asana and Monday are both good options for that. And then every week you need to time block in a little bit of time to review your weekly plan. And if this seems like, oh my gosh, the plan's going to take me more work than the action, it really doesn't take that much time. We're talking 5 to 10 minutes a week is time blocked in to look at your quarterly plan and give yourself a score on your execution. How well did you do your action goals that week? Some goals, and you're going to give yourself a score on a scale of 0 to 10. And some goals have a time or a number each to score, so it's going to be really easy to tell if you did it. So let's say for that last goal, you went to one networking event, but you only got 3 contacts. You're going to get a 6 out of 10 because 3 out of 5 is 6 out of 10, right? If it was that you're going to listen to a certain number of podcasts a week, again, very easy to score. You're going to do something for a certain number of hours. Some things can be a little less quantitative. And so what I like to say as a guide for people for scoring it is a 0 is, of course, if you did nothing done. And the opposite end of the scale, a 10, is if you did adequate progress to reach that goal by the quarter's end. Okay. So if you did this enough that at the end of the quarter, you're going to have achieved it. And that's kind of your scale to help you gauge what score you should get. And your ultimate goal, guys, we know that not every week is going to be a 10 out of 10 across the board. If you are getting an 8 out of 10, that means you're moving the needle, that you're doing enough activity to move the needle. So that's kind of our green light or our goal with this. Now, you give yourself your scores on each action, right? So let's say you have 2 to 4, you can see there's 4 max action goals per focus goal. Then what you do is you calculate your focus area average, right? You just take the average of all your action goals for that week. So, reaching toward your focus goal in business, you got an 8 this week. Great. We want at least an 8. Your financial goal, though, you got like a 2. We have a weekly tracker where then you're going to put in those scores, those averages. And if you've got under an 8, we need to evaluate, like let's say you got a 2. Why did you get a 2 this week? And what do we need to do to ensure we get at least an 8 next week? And this is super powerful. I know it takes a little bit of time every week, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to change that trajectory within a week so that you're not losing more time and you still have the ability to reach your focus goal at the end of a quarter. We're talking about only 12 weeks, guys, right? So each week is roughly 8% of your overall time. We need to be checking in every 8% and adjusting as needed. And then the last step is at the end of the quarter to evaluate how that quarter went and then repeat the planning for the next quarter, which gets easier because you take your last quarter's plan and you tweak it, right? You don't have to start from scratch again. So there's a whole worksheet for that quarterly review. And you start what's on the top left here. You look at each of your focus areas and you say, first off, did I achieve my focus goal, right? If my focus goal was like that one we had as the example to get 2 investment properties with an 8% cash on cash return, it's a yes or a no, right? Our focus goal needs to be written in a way where we can answer yes or no, we did it or did not achieve it. And then we look at our action goals. Well, what was our overall average for the entire quarter on these action goals? And based on that, we've got a little quadrant here. So let's say, yes, I achieved my goal. And yes, I got over an 8. I got a 9 on average. Well, then I'm in the plus columns for both, a yes and a yes. And that means my plans and my goals are aligned. Those actions are aligned with my goal and they worked together. Now you can see if, let's say I achieved my goal, I got those 2 properties, but my average was a 2, right? The actions that I wanted to do, I didn't do them, right? that would mean that my plan is not connected to my progress. So the action goals I set were not related to that focus goal of getting those investment properties. So we use this quadrant to kind of guide us and see where we were. And I will note this last square, sometimes people fall into that. They didn't achieve their goal and they didn't do their actions. So we can't say whether or not their actions were the right actions or anything because they didn't enact their plan. And that's kind of like the saddest place to be because you're not able to learn or grow from that. So at the very least, you want to be enacting the plan because that's going to give you the ability to refine and improve going forward, which that's the last point here. You just use this data to adjust accordingly for the next quarter. And that's what allows you to continue to level up. You are always also, as part of this, reflecting on the quarter and your progress and your achievements. And we always want, as part of this, to appreciate everything we have done, even if we do not reach our eventual goal. And again, you're then repeating the process and creating a plan for the next year. Now I have my email here, and Harley will probably, we can drop it in the chat or something as well. But if you want the greatness game plan forms and this slide deck, you can shoot me an email and I'll get them over to you, and you can enact this for yourself and see the great results that will hopefully come from that. What questions do we have from this, guys?
That was great, Adrienne. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, please hop in, everybody, if you've got questions for Adrienne. This is the time to have her answer them for you.
And I don't have a specific question, but I appreciate the tactical specific and actually limiting it to just four buckets. I think I've used more of like a level 10 kind of life, but having it simplified into the business, financial, personal development, and personal, that simplifies things for me. So I appreciate it.
Great feedback. Thank you.
And people can also kind of expand on it. Like once you master the 4 areas and you're doing well with using that kind of tracking system, you can always expand and apply the same system to like micro level. So even within like a business, you could use the same system.
Yeah. I see your comment, Jill. We can get those to you for sure.
Awesome. Well, if there's no more immediate questions for Adrienne, I want to take a few minutes here before the end of the meeting here to give a chance for people to share, like if they have been successful and having some goals of letting go and delegating more to their virtual professionals. One thing that I've kind of had as one of my goals using this tracker sheet system is to really let go a lot more when it comes to our short-term rentals. We had a situation where I was like totally without cell service for weekend camping, and I get back and there's just this like slew of issues that had to be addressed with our beach houses. And I was like, you know what? Most of these could have just been handled by a virtual professional if I had enabled them with the right resources. And so I immediately this week set up some new things. I created a new virtual phone number that's going to be specifically and exclusively used for interacting with like our service providers and guests related to our short-term rentals, and added a couple of our virtual professionals that I have to that. And then I had a meeting with them and I showed them the shared drive we have where we keep all of our information about the houses. So, and then asked if there was any additional information they might need, and I tasked them with creating an FAQ sheet. And so they're going through our client or guest communication system. We use IGMS, and they're able to gather, the past communications they've seen and questions and the answers that I already had in there and put them into an FAQ sheet. So then it's much faster. The next time those same questions come, they can just look it up and handle it for me and actually make a template message within that IGMS system. So I did like little text intros to all of our handymen, our cleaners, and saying, hey, this is a new phone number. This is who's going to be handling it. And I've empowered them saying, look, just try your best. Even if you don't know the answer, respond with, a polite acknowledgement, and then you can reach out to me. But that way, that 80% of activities that normally would be more on my plate is now on someone else's plate, and I can then just focus on the 20% really high level stuff, and then taking it a next step further to like add value to our guests and also create additional revenue for us. We're planning on having those same VPs that are now handling this stuff call or text the guests prior to their arrival, have a nice warm greeting, say we're looking forward to working with you, and welcome you to our stay. Want to make sure you got our pre-check-in message so you have the door code and know how to get there. And so this just is like eliminating like 90% of the questions that we typically get on those check-in days. And then on their checkout, we can have them do a call and follow up and say, hey, we hope you enjoyed your stay. We know like reviews are so important, and we'd love to have your 5-star review. They can also explain how 4 stars is really bad on Airbnb and VRBO. A lot of people don't know that, and they think like, hey, 4 stars is great, and they'll give you like an amazing review in the text, but then they'll give you 4 stars, and that like is very detrimental to short-term rental hosts. And so having someone preemptively call and explain that, and not me, can really help that. And then finally, for adding revenue for us, we can have relationships, and we have relationships with great realtors in the areas where we have these vacation homes, and we can say, hey, if you really enjoyed your time here, do you think you might be interested in buying your own home in the area, making your own vacation home? And if they say yes, then you can get them connected with that agent. If they end up buying, we typically get like a 25% referral of that commission the agent got. So that's like easy money then for just having an assistant make a phone call for us. So that was just one little area that I've improved in just the last week. And so kind of want to throw that out there. If anybody else has other areas they're working on or struggling with letting go, we can kind of talk about those for a little bit.
This is Bo. Adrienne, that was great. I came in a little bit late, but I called the majority of it there, and those are great goals. So I'd love to get a copy of that as well. So thank you for sharing that. I saw somebody posted something in the comments about trouble with delegating some tasks. I've got a web design and a digital marketing company, so I use my VA. I do a variety of different things for clients, and I guess the way that I've been able to best so far utilize my VA or VAs have been through just choosing one aspect of repeatable work, and starting there with, okay, how can I write a process for this, at least some kind of guidelines for them to follow, and then I have them shadow me with executing that, and then as they as my VA has learned, or virtual professional has gotten better at that, it allows me to kind of evaluate their attention to detail, give them feedback on ways that I would want it done differently, or encourage them in the ways that they're that they're doing it, or new ideas that they bring to it. But they've got the at least a step-by-step kind of guide to one aspect of something that I was doing that was repeatable. So when the next thing comes in, I can hand it to them, and I've been able to do that with less and less instruction, to where for me they're not client facing, but I'm basically project managing an aspect of what they're doing. So every business is different, but I guess for me the takeaway or the main way to kind of engage with my virtual professional was to find one avenue of a repeatable thing that was in their skill set that I could hand off to them and provide feedback for.
Thanks for sharing that, Bo. That was great to kind of hear firsthand how you're doing that in your business. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Anybody else have questions or like to share some things they've recently been delegating to their virtual professionals?
I was just going to add to Bo and Jill's point there. That I agree. Like some of these things, they do seem subjective or like they're in my head. And so sometimes it takes a few iterations, kind of like Bo was saying, of like, it's not going to be perfect the first time. And so I record a screen share, or if it's not something you're doing on the computer, just talking about what you do and what it looks like. And they write it down. And then when you see it in writing, it's easy to be like, oh, I forgot this part, or I forgot this part. But one of our things that was more difficult that I did that was lead distribution, right? So like if we get a client lead in, right? Let's say a buyer, I have all these things that I think about. Like I think about in terms of what agent they're going to go to, what agent's going to help them. Where does my agent live? Where does the buyer want to buy? What are like some agents are really good at short-term rentals. Some agents are really good at long-term rentals. Some agents really love primary residences, right? There are all these things. And I thought it was super complex and that it was all in my head. And then it was like this matrix, but we just started. And I kind of just said, here's a little description of each agent and kind of what their strengths are and where they live. And it worked really well. Like my admin was able to take that, and it took a couple iterations, but she was able to make a spreadsheet where any admin now can take John Doe, the lead, and check it against the spreadsheet and give that lead to an agent who's a good fit. So it worked out well, better than I thought it would, honestly.
I saw Siobhan had a question about how do you get all hours of the day coverage for short-term rentals. We actually just had a new client coming on that had the same need, and she is okay still like taking the messaging herself during the day, but wanted someone to do it at night so she's not having her sleep interrupted. And the question was just like, how do you kind of justify that expense for someone that may not be doing anything on some nights? Like if there's not a lot of happening, they happen to have like a large portfolio of STRs they manage. It's like 30 plus. So there are usually messages at all hours of the day. And, we just talked about, look, do you have your listings fully optimized? Are you rotating images, updating descriptions, playing with pricing? Are you promoting them on social media? Are you making like Facebook marketing, marketplace listings for all your short-term rentals and posting those in the groups for all the various regions where guests come to all the various houses? Like that's a full-time job in itself right there, especially when you've got 30 houses across different regions. And then also bookkeeping. One thing a lot of people kind of overlook is like, there's a lot of bookkeeping that goes on with real estate, especially with the short-term rentals, all the different transactions coming in, and especially if you're managing or co-hosting for people and wanting to make sure the money is going to the right place. And it is actually a really common skill set for many of our virtual professionals to have bookkeeping and social media management on that same time. So they can do both bookkeeping and help with marketing and the listing optimization in one person. And so you can have, and that stuff is all things that can be done asynchronously. So you don't need to have that shift overlap with you so much. Like, let's say an executive assistant. I want my executive assistant working every single hour that I'm working because I want to be able to message them all the time. Someone who's just doing marketing and guest messaging, I can maybe just meet with them once a week to do a check-in call. And then they're just doing stuff asynchronous for me and doing, posts on the task portal so I can keep an eye on what their progress is. Anybody else want to share some things they've been handing off to their virtual professionals that it helps other people to kind of just hear like what other people are doing and kind of brainstorm in that way? Christy, I know you kind of started, revamping some things. Do you want to share a little bit about what you've been starting to hand off?
Yeah, and I will say too that I'll just also make a plug for, I appreciate Workergenics and Harley sitting down with me for a good chunk of time to kind of talk through it, because I definitely get in my head, and that was really helpful. And with April, I can be I can overthink tools and stuff a lot, and realizing that there is a lot more functionality in Google Workspace. And with April, we're also trying out just using Google Chat for now, like just check-ins instead of by text or email, and then using the workspaces, and we're separating them out into a couple different like buckets, including like this was just today, like created one kind of a learning room because I enjoy learning stuff, but also to help her and thinking like her to understand my thought process and how I'm thinking about it. And so now we have like a virtual room. It's akin to channels on Slack, and that kind of functionality, where I will now share kind of YouTube videos of like, this is kind of what I'm thinking for my process that I think will work. And then a separate one for like the different parts of my business, which also as I in 6 months, hoping to have even more of a team. So then they have a place to plug in. But again, I really try to avoid internal emails, and even text has gotten a bit overwhelming. So I think moving things to chat in Google Chat I think will be really helpful just for those like quick check-ins, like, just the, good morning, good afternoon, checking in, checking out, or just an update. And then the other thing was using Otter, and I'll probably just upgrade to the paid version because I think it will be that useful, where I just recorded a voice memo driving and listed out like 15 things, and then just asked April to text me also if she hasn't heard from me by 2:00 that I've completed or tracked them. And sure enough, sent me a text with all of those line items, and that actually is really helpful. I'm reading Building a Second Brain too, and so trying to create those systems and places that I can have a trusted bank of all the things that kind of cross my that I think about in random times and places, and now it's the practice of experimenting, putting them into place. So I don't know if that helps anybody, or if anybody else has struggled with the same thing or has found systems that works. Also with trying to find tools that, I spend a lot on third-party apps. So I love Asana, but I'm also leaning more back towards like Trello, which is a free app, and the fact that it also integrates into Google Workspace, into the Google Spaces and stuff too. So trying to those things that integrate.
Could you expand on what Trello is?
Trello is just like a project management. It's basically like a big virtual sticky note board. So I will say like Asana is a lot more, there's a lot of tools that are a lot more functional. But Trello is the easiest, from what I found, the lowest barrier to entry because it's so visual and customizable, and it's really functional as a free version. And the book I do recommend, Building a Second Brain, has also helped me realize that he even admits it's not about getting it perfect, and also you're going to change tools over time. Sometimes I think I get stuck in trying to find the perfect tool for all of the things, and just realizing just stick with this, keep it simple for now. Again, lowest barrier to entry, because it's also more about the behavior of it, not the actual tool itself. It's getting into the habit of going to these places or having the some of those systems. But Trello, I've just found it to be the simplest for anybody to learn and visualize. So
I live and die by to-do lists, so.
Yeah, I write lots of sticky notes. I've used Trello just for personal, but then I have to translate them somewhere else. If I want to share them with somebody like my virtual professional and have them act on them. So I've used exactly just like
everywhere.
That, Jill. Yeah. But so I've used Trello for 10 years, and then I stopped using it as much and used Asana, which is another project management tool, for a couple of years, because with Trello, it was easy to see individual projects, but it was hard to see all the, where the status of all the projects were. So I started using Asana. Well, now Trello has released additional features on their paid version, which is still cheaper than Asana. Last time I checked, where you can actually see multiple projects and calendars that pull in from multiple boards, all in one place. So they kind of solved that problem that had led me away from Trello. And but the free version is great, and the paid version is great too. So I'm a big fan of Trello. And we are kind of transitioning from using Monday.com as much back into Trello. And you know, with my VA, and it's great because you can assign due dates and tasks, and you know, and even individual checklist items to to individual people, so everybody kind of knows what they're working on, and how that fits into the context of, you know, the overall project. And one other point that I thought of, Christy, as you were talking, was whatever tool you use, it's just super important to communicate on a regular basis. I found with anybody that you're working with, but especially with like a VA, you know, every day, you know, we try to have a check-in, even if it's on Slack. We use Slack, but you know, you can use Google Chat or whatever, you know, method works for you. But you know, it's great to just, you know, for them to know that you're there to answer any questions, and then, you know, for them to be able to ask questions and keep projects moving, or keep tasks moving. So I love the idea, Christy, that you had too, of having like a learning board, or, you know, like a kind of an ideas board where you guys can collaborate on you know, different, you know, new tools that you might want to use, things like that. So I love that idea. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Okay.
I feel like I sort of struggle with a lot of the tools that might be out in the world that could help with some of these things, even down to like the to-do lists that I drown in. And then if I don't have it with me and I'm somewhere else, I can't keep it all straight, because it's everything from the kids to personal to household to grocery lists to work stuff. And I would love a way to have that in a digital, easy to use format that also can, you know, there's like priorities for the day, there's like priorities for the week, there's like long-term goals, and being able to really, because I write them and I scribble on them and then I mark things off and then I have to rewrite them. And then there's the like right here, right now, and then there's the later, and then if I can get to it. And so if it is Trello something that would help with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think, go ahead, Christy. Sorry.
I was gonna say, it really depends. Like the thing I would highly recommend that, like, I'm just in the middle of this book, but even their online resources, the thing that the Building a Second Brain, he actually has kind of also a landing page. I'll see if I can look it up in a second. And you can, and he breaks it out like your learning style, and it will give some recommendations on tools based on that. Because like it is, we all learn and process things differently. So that is I think that was also helpful for me to understand too. I am on the over analytical side, like, and so some of the tools that make sense for me may not make sense for you. And he also advocates for, like, it's not necessarily one tool. There's another guy that I follow. I'll put a link in the chat of this guy, Jeff Sue, who has taken a few different things. And he actually uses a tool called Todoist, which is another really easy, low friction digital, task manager. But then it's partly like he captures everything there, but he makes it a point. Then he uses a tool called Notion. So again, it's a process of like capture, and like they break down like capture, distill, process, like, and delegate. And it takes some experimentation. So it was kind of what I've found.
Thank you.
Let me see.
I was going to say, the Monday task board we have, it can be customized too, to have a lot of those kind of like, if you want to prioritize things differently, there is like a column for priorities. You can create sub items on it. There is a lot of customization that can be done there. I know it is kind of like it's more technical, so they're definitely starting out. There might be some other task manager tools that are a lot more user friendly. I would say there's kind of a steep learning curve. Once you're into it, or maybe just ask your VP to customize it and say, hey, can you help me figure out how we can have like a daily priority list. There's actually ways you can create custom views with your Monday task board that will filter only on certain columns or fields or values. So let's say you added a column that said like, or you just wanted to have one that's like, hey, today's urgent things, and you're using the deadline feature, the column we have in the task portal, it's already there. We actually had a client do this where she wanted to just see like a calendar view and then another view of like what's happening today. And so she had her VP go in there, create the custom views, set the filters so it shows like, hey, only things that are happening today. That's one view. And then another view that you can have as a calendar instead of that normal table view that you're all used to seeing. It actually shows it as like a calendar, and then it has like the list as agenda items on each day. So then it's like you can kind of see what's coming up. And then, so just kind of, I would encourage you like play with it or ask your VP to help you create the views based on what you would like to see, and just throw stuff out there. Be like, hey, I'd love to see a daily agenda, or I'd love to see what's happening this week, and have them make it for you.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we've had some great discussion here. We are past the 45-minute mark. I don't want to take too much more time. Does anybody else have things they want to share real quickly, or questions for Adrienne before we call it for a day? Awesome. Well, thank you everyone so much. Thank you again, Adrienne, for sharing your all amazing goal setting systems with us. Again, like her email is there. We'll send out an email that has her contact information so you can reach out to her, get those template forms, and get connected with her as well for additional questions. Really appreciate all of you guys joining us today and the great questions and discussions. Look forward to seeing you all next month.